everybody, this is Tina Catola and slightly fluish Sarah Kotz here on the Third Stage Astrology channel, and we are going to talk about the 3 stages of Scorpio. Now, if you're just joining us, I want to tell you just a little bit about Third Stage Astrology, because it is based on the understanding that there are 3 stages to each sign, which are completely different personality types. They are long processes of development, and each stage lasts for 3 or 4 lifetimes. So you're going to be one of the types of Scorpio, and if you're in one of the later stages, all the earlier stages have an impact on the process of your development, even though they're very different from each other. Now, each sign has a specific purpose, and each person expresses that purpose in their own unique way. So Scorpio's purpose is to be a very specific and precise vehicle for divine will on earth. And it's interesting because one of the other videos that we recently made with my other student, Katja, about the moon's nodes and the sun in Scorpio, we're doing a series about that. For people who don't understand the moon's nodes, we will do a video to explain what that is. But at any rate, she asked me about that purpose for Scorpio in terms of, isn't everybody a vehicle for divine will on earth? And yes, everybody is. The difference with Sun and Scorpio is that Scorpio is very intensely, either consciously or subconsciously aware of their focus as of being a profound vehicle for some specific purpose. So it's a more intense, more refined approach to that whole concept. In a way, each sign expresses a specific spiritual concept that's true of all of humanity, but they're more focused on a specific piece of human potential. So because Scorpio is about divine will, is about purpose, it's when the person starts into first stage, in their first stage lifetimes, they're feeling as though there's a separation between this world and the spiritual world. And this is a common concept that humanity has. So some people think there is no spiritual world, and other people think there's a material world and there's a spiritual world. And that spiritual dualism is this idea that there's a very big separation between spiritual life and the material world, and there actually isn't. The material world is just as spiritual as the spiritual world. It all interpenetrates. The divine consciousness, the God, however we understand it, is always here, always present. But first stage Scorpio doesn't perceive it that way. First stage Scorpio, and in a way, it makes sense to look at life that way, because when we're in this physical world, it feels like that. We feel separate. Everybody is very precisely focused on our own smaller experience, on our very specific interests, and that's the way it's supposed to be. However, if you come into first stage in Scorpio with a really, really strong mission, and it feels either consciously or unconsciously like it's a mission from God, it can get you into trouble in the long run. And I'll explain why as we go along with first stage Scorpio. So the first stage Scorpio person comes in, they have a specific thing they're trying to do and they're trying to accomplish in the world. And they do feel as though God's up there somewhere and has told them to come here and do this. And they may not consciously think of it that way, or they may, but they certainly do underneath it all. And their feeling is this purpose is more important than anything else. It's more important than just one specific small individual. It's more important than me as a small individual. It's more important than just 1 or 2 other people. I don't want to do anything that will harm anybody, but my mission is all that matters. And I've got to look only at that, and I can't let anything else get in the way. And the interesting thing is that as first stage Scorpio progresses, there's a certain kind of skepticism that develops, because even though they may start out feeling like they have a divine mission, they can slowly lose sight of that divine piece, because they don't want anything to get in the way of fulfilling this goal or fulfilling this purpose. And to think of trusting in God or trusting in the unknown, or not knowing what's behind that next rock on the path, that's too much risk. I have to know exactly what's going on. I have to see everything that's happening around me. I can't trust anything to fate, because I think it's too important. What I'm doing has to be accomplished. It has to get accomplished no matter what. And so they're very driven, and they go forward to fulfill a specific purpose. And as I said, they don't want to cause anybody any harm, but sooner or later, as they're on this mission, something or someone gets in their way. And they try using their own powers, because that's, I think, the error that people have in first stage Scorpio. It's this feeling that they're in it all on their own. They have to do this. They have to be really strong and really powerful as a strong individual. And no matter what, they've got to fulfill this purpose. And they have to do it all on their own with no outside hidden assistance. They might be able to get people to back them up. That's fine, that they'll take that kind of support. They can marshal their army, but they don't want to leave anything to chance. So if they come up against an obstacle, which may be another person, eventually they realize, well, it's the lesser of two evils. I've got to blow this person out of my way. I don't want to hurt them, but if they're not going to get out of my way, I'm going to have to obliterate them if I need to. And they end up hurting people. They end up, there's destruction is wrought in the process of achieving certain goals. So after 3 or 4 lifetimes of going forward and doing everything they can to fulfill the mission, they've often achieved a lot of what they set out to do. Every Scorpio is different. Some achieve more, some achieve less of that overall purpose. No one achieves all of it. And they've reached a point too where they start to look behind themselves and they feel like, well, I've achieved some of my purpose, I've achieved some of my mission, some of my goals, not all of it. But then they look behind them and they see this long string of bodies. And they see all the destruction that's occurred. And then there's a tremendous regret that's usual for the end of first stage Scorpio. And there is a for some it's more a fear, because for some they feel most at the end of first stage Scorpio feel terrible. They feel tremendous regret for what they've done wrong. Some people feel, oh my God, am I going to get in trouble for this? There's a fear of punishment that occurs. So those who have the response of regret will tend to really collapse into a self-hatred and fall into second stage, and where they become a completely different personality type. Others tend to almost, they get back to that sense of God's out there and I'm here and I screwed up and God's going to punish me. And so some will decide to avoid that fate. So I'm going to fight against that time of reckoning. And if I'm bad, I'm going to be really bad. And this is actually where the coffee table astrology books tend to pick up on Scorpio. They tend to say, oh, Scorpios are mean, they're bad, they're evil, they're going to hurt you. And some will, but it's actually a minority, and it's a minority at the end of first stage Scorpio. So those will say, okay, if I'm bad, I'm going to be really bad. I'm going to be good at being bad. And they're slowly, they're putting off the ultimate collapse into second stage. But eventually the guilt, even at a subconscious level, starts to get to them. So eventually they start attracting destructive experiences to them because of the subconscious guilt, even though they're not consciously admitting to it. And there is a point where they will sort of collapse, or they could even end a lifetime in this, I'm the big, strong, bad person, and yes, crap's happening to me, but I'm still unrepentant. And once they go into their next lifetime, that sense of regret hits them, because the personality will cling to its ego. But this is the reason we have reincarnation, so we can get ourselves washed off and cleaned up and come back and try again. That's the purpose of it all. Yeah. And so a person can get born into early second stage Scorpio where they're not so resentful, or so they don't posture so much as I'm big and strong and powerful and I'm bad, so I may as well be really good at it. Mm-hmm. But some even born into early second stage Scorpio can be like that. Now, what's interesting is one of the things that helped me understand these 3 stages, or discover these 3 stages, is that in medieval astrology there were different symbols for the signs. Each sign had several symbols, and not all of those symbols have actually survived. But Scorpio is the sign, and it's funny that Scorpio is the sign, because Scorpio is fixed water. It holds on to things, it holds on to feelings, it holds on to memories. So that's the sign that's held on to all its symbols. That makes perfect sense. So the 3 symbols for Scorpio are the scorpion, which is the symbol for first stage. So that's the Scorpions tend to live out in the desert, and a first stage Scorpio is kind of born into this desert world where it's a struggle to survive, and I have to fulfill my mission no matter what, and I'll sting anyone who gets in my way. The symbol for second stage Scorpio is called the gray lizard, and it's not a specific species of animal. It's more an image of a gray lizard that hides in the mud and hibernates over the winter. It's this sense of self-immolation that happens in second stage Scorpio. The symbol for third stage Scorpio is the eagle, which soars above. So we'll come back to that when we get into third stage. But it is interesting that these symbols have survived so clearly. So at any rate, what happens as a person goes into second stage Scorpio is that there is huge regret and huge guilt for what they've done wrong. Now, some are still clinging to some of those second stage traits. So they'll be in the second, third stage, and they'll transform slowly. So they're starting to experience the second stage backlash because the second stage Scorpio person feels like they're supposed to be punished for everything that they did wrong. And so the way to be punished is to deny yourself the most precious thing in life, which is love. So second stage Scorpio people get rejected all the time. They're getting rejected. In early second stage Scorpio, they're often abused in a lot of different ways. People attacking them, betraying them, treating them like the garbage they subconsciously feel that they must be. But if they're born into that early second stage, they don't consciously feel bad, they don't consciously feel guilty, but subconsciously they feel powerfully guilty. And it's that subconscious magnet that pulls all these destructive experiences towards them. The other thing that happens is that purpose gets sabotaged in second stage. So there's that gray lizard lying in the mud at the bottom of the river. So second stage Scorpio people either don't know what they want to do with their lives, they have no sense of purpose, and they feel really haunted by that, and they're always wandering around trying to find out, what do I want? What do I want to do? My life is a vacuum, and I can't figure out why, and why are all these bad things happening to me? Other second stage Scorpio people, they know what they want to do, but every time they try to do it, something goes wrong. Some doors close. There's a sabotage, a deep subconscious sabotage that goes on. It keeps wrecking things. It keeps wrecking their relationships. It keeps wrecking their careers. It keeps stomping on them. Now, if they're in that second, third stage slow transition, what will happen is that they're starting to get rejected and they're getting stomped on a lot, but they're still feeling like they want to be strong. So they will test people, and they will be mean to people because they're getting vengeful about all the ways they've been hurt, because they don't consciously realize that it's their own subconscious guilt that is attracting all these negative experiences to them. So they feel like, well, people are bad, and people keep betraying me, and people keep letting me down. So I'm going to really protect myself, and I'm going to spend a lot of time poking and testing and prodding. And so it's very difficult because they can't trust other people very easily at all. And they tend to be abused and abusive. Mm-hmm. Other second stage Scorpios who just went into regret immediately as soon as they saw that they'd harmed a lot of people, they don't test and prod and poke, and they're not vengeful. They're more very innocent and really shocked by all these experiences that keep happening. Mm-hmm. Why do I keep getting hurt? So I think second stage Scorpio is probably the worst second stage of all the signs. I would love to help everybody who's in it to get out of it, because it really is. There's no reason. There's no need to really keep suffering like that. Mm-hmm. And yet, because this deep subconscious regret is so strong, and it's so hard to even see that there's something inside you that's calling these experiences to you. They seem like they're happening for no reason. Does God hate me? Well, God is within us. It is part of your own access to that God self that has called that to you. So it's, as a person gets to the end of second stage in any sign, the stresses of being in second stage, they just get to a point where it's so impossible to cope with that the person is searching for answers, and they're looking anywhere to try and get out of this situation that they're in. And so as soon as a person is fully committed to making that leap to get out of second stage, even though they may not call it that, you might be in that situation right now and you're watching this for the first time and the lights are all turning on. Because as soon as you decide you want the answers, then you're in second, third stage, and you'll get through it and you'll get out. Now, what's interesting with all the signs is that in all three stages, there's a different part of the mind that is dominant. So in the first stage of every sign, the conscious mind is the dominant part of the psyche. So in first stage Scorpio, it's that conscious mind. I know my mission. I know what I'm here to accomplish. I know what I'm here to do. And unfortunately, I'm secondary to that. You know, I'm expendable if need be. If other people need to be expendable, I regret that, but I got to go forward. It's the conscious mind is in control. In second stage Scorpio, the subconscious mind is in control. So a second stage Scorpio person doesn't usually understand, why can't I get anywhere in life? Why am I constantly getting rejected? Why do I experience the abuse, which is not true for all second stage Scorpios if you're in the second stage, but it is the case in early second stage. There's always experiences of abuse that early second stage Scorpios have experienced. But at any rate, the subconscious is drawing this to the person. Now, when we're in third stage, it is the higher self or the spiritual consciousness of the person that is the dominant part of the psyche. So when we're in second, third stage, which is that transformation from second stage to third stage, and which actually takes about 1 to 4 decades, which seems like a long time, but it's a very short time in terms of the soul, because we spend 3 or 4 lifetimes in each stage. When we're in that second, third stage transition, we are gaining a greater and greater relationship with that spiritual part of ourselves or that higher self. And we are utilizing our contact with and our expression of our higher self to transform our subconscious patterns. That's what everybody does in every sign. And so for second, third stage Scorpio and for second, third stage of every sign, there are riddles that need to be solved. And each sign is a different set of riddles and different keys to unlock those riddles. And for second, third stage Scorpio, there's 2 things that are required in order to go into third stage. And these 2 things are faith and self-forgiveness. Now, what faith really is faith is, and you could call faith a belief in God, a belief in something divine. And, you know, that's helpful. And that gets us through things sometimes. For Scorpio, it's deeper than that, because actually Scorpio in first stage didn't want to believe in something that they can't see, that they can't prove, because the stakes are too high. And Scorpio is kind of the original skeptic of the zodiac. So they've got to really understand it. They've got to know what it is, and they've got to experience it firsthand. So Scorpios need that spiritual experience. They need that experience of divine consciousness, that experience of the divine reality. And so they go searching for that and opening themselves up to that. And it's quite amazing, because third stage Scorpio people, they're tremendous miracle workers, because they have such a profound contact with the divine, and they really allow it to act through them in a very focused, almost laser beam kind of way, because they get back that sense of purpose from first stage, but they've learned that they're not alone in it. That's the mistake Scorpio made in first stage, is thinking, I'm here in this desert world, I've left God behind, I have to do this all on my own, under my own human powers, or maybe become as superhuman as I possibly can, but I gotta do it alone, God's separate from me. So to have the spiritual consciousness be a living part of you, and to allow it to move through you, to explore the spiritual life in a way that makes sense to you and that you can experience in a personal way, is key for Scorpios to get into third stage. The other key is self-forgiveness, because obviously all those destructive, negative, unhappy experiences of second stage occurred because of guilt, because you never forgave yourself for what you did wrong. You made the mistake in first stage of thinking you had to do it all by yourself. And that's how people got hurt, because you finally thought, I've just got to plow through it. And if someone gets hurt, I'm sorry, I regret it, but it can't be helped. And that never sits right for Scorpio. So as much as they have this bad guy reputation in the conventional astrology books, they aren't really like that underneath it all. At the core, there's a very gentle, sweet soul in every Scorpio. And so it never felt right to hurt somebody, and it always haunted them. But what they need to do is they need to understand that they always were doing the best that they could. They did not know how to do it any other way. So in order to forgive yourself, there's 2 ways to do it. One way is to actually go back and remember the experiences in those lifetimes in first stage, but to go back and comprehend that whenever somebody else gets hurt, that's also their creation. All of what we're all divine beings. We are all little pieces of God. We are all little godlings, and we create our own experiences even when we don't realize that we're doing it. So the people who got hurt by you, there was some reason for their own soul development, for their own soul process. They were there participating in this on some level. And it's not just you who were the bad guy. There's a reason for everything to happen. And to have compassion for yourself and know you were doing the absolute best that you could. You would not have hurt somebody if you knew some other way to do it. Gaining that compassion for self releases the guilt. Now, not everybody has access to ways to remember past lives. Not everybody needs to do that. So another way to work on that self-forgiveness for a second, third stage Scorpio is to think about anything in the current lifetime that you feel guilty about, that you feel bad about, any mistakes you made. And they can be really tiny. They can be some dumb little stupid thing you did when you were 3 years old. But it doesn't matter, because they are the perfect fodder for doing the exact same thing, of going into that situation, feeling absolute compassion for yourself, knowing that you were doing the absolute best that you could in that circumstance, that you would have done better if you could, and that anybody who was hurt by that is either going to understand that it's not that big a deal, or was in it for their own reasons. There was some reason that their soul was there, that they developed through that process. They were either in their own negative pattern that caused them to come and get hurt, or they gained something from having had that unhappy experience. And when we have that spiritual perspective, we are more capable of perceiving that bigger picture of how it's not all your fault. Mm-hmm. So those are the two keys. And as the person works through all of that, then they no longer attract these destructive experiences. They no longer attract rejection. They are now able to consciously recognize their purpose. They no longer have obstructions between them and their purpose. And also, whenever they go to accomplish something, they don't have to do it alone. They have divine assistance. Mm-hmm. So if we go back to the first stage Scorpio situation, when they were trying to accomplish their purpose and they came to a barrier, an obstacle that they couldn't solve through their own conscious capabilities alone, there were no more answers. Instead of just, okay, we need a big bomb to blow everything up, instead of doing that, that's the time to turn to that divine consciousness and say, okay, I can't do this by myself. I can't see what the outcome is. So I'm going to surrender and allow a higher force to come in here and transform the situation for me. Now, what's interesting is that there are many times in second, third stage Scorpio, the person encounters a life challenge that can't be resolved by any other way but by the use of faith, by the use of some divine force or power. It's not uncommon to have a situation where someone very close to them is in trouble, or has a major health challenge, or something that can only be resolved through bringing through spiritual knowledge, spiritual understanding, through allowing miracles to occur. Because a third stage Scorpio person is a miracle worker. They are able to pinpoint, because Scorpio has developed tremendous focus through having had the first stage lifetime of being really so purpose driven, even through having the second stage experiences of being lost in a sea of pain. You focus on the pain. You can't forget the pain. It's with you all the time. That's actually another way of learning to be focused. So they have this very precise, penetrating vision. This is why the eagle is the symbol for third stage Scorpio, because eagles are actually pretty phenomenal. They have tremendous eyesight. They can be way, way up in the sky where we can barely see them, and they can see a tiny little creature rustling through the grass and come sailing down and grab their dinner. They can watch the sunspots. They have eyes that can watch the sun, that we can't look at the sun, but they can look at the sun. And that's such an amazing symbol, because spiritually speaking, the sun represents the soul. The sun represents the divine on the core of our being. And the eagle can actually see what's going on at the divine level of consciousness. And a third stage Scorpio is tremendously gentle and profoundly caring, and can be so soft in their healing and their work with their purpose and with other people, but they can also be tremendously ruthless when necessary, when it's for the higher good. Mm-hmm. So they are so multi-talented and multifaceted in what they're capable of accomplishing once they've forgiven themselves and they've accessed this divine understanding. It's pretty amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the other thing that happens is that for every sign, there is also a first, third stage transition, which I call the crossroads. Because when a person is at the end of first stage Scorpio, or the end of first stage of any sign, there's this opportunity that opens up to go straight to third stage. You don't have to go through all the hell of second stage. And really, if there's any sign I'd love to save from the hell of second stage, it's definitely Scorpio, because that's the most unpleasant one, as I said. So when a person gets to the end of first stage Scorpio, there is this recognition of, oh my God, I've hurt people, I've pushed my will, I've enforced my will. So at that moment in time, there's this opportunity to do the work that a person does in second, third stage. Instead of having gone through all the lifetimes of suffering where you paid all this negative karma for all the pain and hurt and suffering, you can forgive yourself for what happened and reach out to that divine consciousness and let it become part of you. And there's a challenge there because there's also that type of Scorpio that thinks, uh-oh, I did something wrong, I'm going to be punished, I better escape from it. That's almost like there are these three paths. There's the path of going down into the darkest part of Scorpio. There's the path of going down into the self-destructive part of second stage, or there's the path of reaching out and surrendering to the divine and recognizing, yes, when I encountered an obstacle and I didn't know how to fix it myself, that was my time to surrender.
Mm-hmm.
That's the challenge, because first stage Scorpio people, you don't want to leave anything to chance. But the comprehension that when we turn to that living divine energy, that living divine consciousness that permeates us, that exists, is omnipresent. You know that saying that God is omniscient, omnipresent, omnipotent. It seems kind of pat, but it's utterly true. That divine force cannot be, nothing can destroy it, nothing can get in its way. It's omnipotent. It's an all-knowing, and it's all present. It's there in every fiber of physical existence. It's there in every facet of our being, and it's so close to us that we don't notice it. So to be able to just let go to that is the challenge at the end of first stage Scorpio. But a person can do that. They can transform straight from the Scorpion straight to the Eagle and become that tremendous miracle worker and realize, oh wow, I was going about this and I was making the mistake of spiritual dualism, of feeling like there's a separation and I've got to do it all by myself. If they make that leap, then they can go straight to becoming the person who's a miracle worker. And then that initial purpose that they brought into the lifetime will be perfectly fulfilled. And it will be fulfilled without harming anybody. But it is about doing what seems impossible. So I think those are the three stages of Scorpio. And suppose we will close here.